The pristine neighborhood of Willowbrook seemed perfect: manicured lawns, matching mailboxes, and an iron-fisted HOA president who measured grass with a ruler. But when Margaret Chen's teenage daughter Emma dared to paint their fence blue instead of approved beige, Margaret never imagined it would cost Emma her life. The ambulance sirens that shattered the Tuesday morning quiet weren't for a heart attack or accident, they were for a 17-year-old girl who'd been systematically destroyed by a monster hiding behind property values and covenant rules. And when the truth came out about what really happened in those final moments, the neighborhood's darkest secrets would explode into the light, bringing justice swift, brutal, and absolutely deserved. The morning Emma Chen died, she was humming while painting the picket fence that bordered their front yard. The soft blue she'd chosen, ocean breeze, according to the paint can, caught the early sunlight like pieces of sea glass. Margaret watched from the kitchen window, coffee mug warming her hands, thinking how beautiful her daughter looked with paint streaks in her dark hair and that determined set to her jaw that meant she was doing something she believed in. "It's going to be gorgeous, Mom," Emma had said the night before, spreading paint swatches across the kitchen table. "Something that actually has personality instead of that boring beige everyone else has." Margaret had hesitated. The Willowbrook Homeowners Association had strict guidelines about exterior colors, and their president, Victoria Sterling, was notorious for her enforcement. But Emma was 17, about to graduate, and this was her way of leaving a mark on the world before heading to art school in the fall. "Just make sure you read the HOA guidelines first," Margaret had said, though she'd already decided to let Emma have this one act of rebellion. Emma had rolled her eyes. "Mom, it's just paint. What's the worst that could happen?" Now, watching Emma work with such joy, Margaret felt a flutter of maternal pride. Her daughter had always been creative, always pushing boundaries in small, harmless ways. The blue fence was perfect, not garish or offensive, just a different. Beautiful. The doorbell rang at 8:47 a.m. Margaret opened the door to find Victoria Sterling standing on her porch, her silver hair pulled back in its usual severe bun, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. At 62, Victoria had been HOA president for 8 years, and she wore the position like armor. Her husband Robert stood slightly behind her, his expensive suit wrinkled and his eyes avoiding Margaret's gaze. "Margaret," Victoria's voice was crisp, controlled. "We need to discuss your daughter's project." "Good morning, Victoria." "Robert." Margaret kept her tone pleasant, though her stomach tightened. "If you're talking about the fence," Emma checked the guidelines. "Blue is listed as an acceptable color." Victoria's laugh was sharp. "Ocean breeze is not the approved shade of blue, Margaret. The covenant specifically states muted blue-gray from the approved palette. This..." She gestured toward where Emma was carefully applying a second coat. "This is a violation." "It's beautiful," Margaret said firmly. "And it's not hurting anyone." "It's hurting property values," Victoria snapped. "It's creating a precedent that could lead to chaos." "Do you want rainbow houses? Purple doors? Where does it end?" Emma had stopped painting and was walking toward them, brush still in hand. Margaret saw the defiance in her daughter's eyes and felt a surge of protective pride mixed with worry. "Mrs. Sterling," Emma said, her voice steady despite the slight tremor Margaret could detect. "I researched the guidelines thoroughly. Blue is approved, and this shade falls within the acceptable range." Victoria's face flushed. "Don't you dare lecture me about our own covenant, young lady. I wrote those guidelines." "Then maybe you should read them more carefully," Emma replied, and Margaret's heart sank, the silence stretched taut. Victoria's eyes narrowed, and Margaret recognized the look. She'd seen it before when other residents had challenged the HOA president's authority. It never ended well. "Mrs. Sterling," Margaret intervened quickly, "perhaps we could discuss this like reasonable adults. The fence will be repainted by tomorrow evening." Victoria cut her off. "Or you'll face fines and potential legal action. The covenant is clear, and I won't have my neighborhood turned into some artistic experiment." "It's not an experiment," Emma said, her voice rising. "It's my home too, and I should have some say in what it looks like." Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "You're a child playing with things you don't understand. This neighborhood has standards, has order. People like your mother come here because they want to belong to something better, something respectable. They don't come here to watch their investments crumble because some teenager thinks she knows better than the adults who've worked to build this community. Margaret felt the words hit like physical blows. People like your mother. The implication was clear, the subtext ugly. She opened her mouth to respond, but Emma was faster. People like my mother. Emma's voice was deadly quiet. You mean people who work 16-hour days as nurses to afford houses in neighborhoods where their neighbors think they don't belong? People who sacrifice everything so their kids can have opportunities. Emma, Margaret warned, but her daughter wasn't finished. My mom earned her place here, Mrs. Sterling. She saves lives while you measure grass with rulers and terrorize families over paint colors. If anyone doesn't belong here, it's you. The slap came so fast Margaret barely saw it. The sound cracked through the morning air like a gunshot, and Emma staggered backward, her hand flying to her cheek. Victoria. Margaret stepped between them, her own hand raised. How dare you? The fence will be repainted, Victoria said, her voice shaking with rage. And if it's not, I'll make sure your family regrets ever moving to Willowbrook. There are ways to make people understand they are not welcome, Margaret. Legal ways. Proper ways. She turned and stalked away, Robert trailing behind her like a guilty shadow. Margaret pulled Emma into her arms, feeling her daughter's body trembling with shock and anger. Are you okay? Did she hurt you? I'm fine, Emma said, but her voice was thick with tears. I'm not repainting the fence, Mom. I won't let her win. Sweetheart, no. Emma pulled away, her eyes blazing. She can't just hit people because she doesn't like what they say. She can't just decide who belongs and who doesn't. This is our home. Margaret looked at her daughter's face, at the red mark Victoria's ring had left on her cheek, and felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. You're right. We are not repainting anything. That afternoon, Margaret called the HOA management company and requested copies of all covenant documents. She also called her lawyer, a friend from nursing school who specialized in housing law. If Victoria Sterling wanted a fight, Margaret would give her one dot, but she didn't expect the war to escalate so quickly. The first incident happened that evening. Margaret came home from her shift at the hospital to find Emma in the driveway, staring at their car. Someone had keyed deep scratches along both sides, spelling out trashy in jagged letters. Mom, Emma's voice was small. I think this is about the fence. Margaret's hands clenched into fists. Did you see who did it? No, but... Emma hesitated. Mrs. Patterson from next door said she saw some teenagers hanging around, but she couldn't identify them. She seemed scared to talk about it. Margaret knew why. Victoria Sterling had ways of making people fall in line. The HOA president had connections, influence, and a reputation for making life difficult for those who opposed her. Over the next week, the harassment escalated. Their morning newspaper disappeared. Their mailbox was vandalized. Someone left a dead bird on their doorstep. Each incident was small, deniable, but together they created an atmosphere of menace that made Emma jump at every sound. Maybe we should just repaint the fence, Margaret said one evening, watching Emma struggle with her homework while constantly checking the windows. No, Emma said firmly. If we give in now, she wins. And what happens to the next family she decides doesn't belong? What happens to Mr. Ramirez when she decides his garden is too ethnic? What happens to the Johnsons when she decides their music is too loud? Margaret looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and saw not a teenager but a young woman with principles worth fighting for. You're right. We stand our ground. But standing their ground came with a price neither of them anticipated. The breaking point came on a Tuesday morning, exactly 2 weeks after Victoria Sterling had slapped Emma. Margaret was working a double shift at the hospital, and Emma was home alone, studying for her AP Literature exam. The doorbell rang at 10:15 a.m. Emma opened the door expecting a delivery, but found herself face to face with Victoria Sterling and 2 men she didn't recognize, one in a suit, one in a sheriff's uniform. Emma Chen, the man in the suit, said. I'm Jim Bradley, HOA attorney. This is Deputy Morrison. We are here to discuss your continued violation of neighborhood covenants. Emma's heart hammered, but she kept her voice steady. My mother isn't home. You'll need to speak with her. Actually, Victoria said, her smile cold, we are here to speak with you. You're the one who painted the fence. You're the one who's been defying our authority. I'm 17, Emma said. I'm a minor. You can't, we can and we will, Bradley interrupted. The covenant violations are accumulating and the HOA board has VOT. Emma's post went viral at 3:22 a.m. She titled it, "When Your HOA President Slaps You for Painting Your Fence Blue," a thread, and accompanied it with photos, the beautiful blue fence, the red mark on her cheek immediately after Victoria's slap, the keyed car, the dead bird on their doorstep. But it was her words that caught fire across social media platforms. This is Victoria Sterling, president of Willowbrook HOA. Today she threatened to destroy my college future because I painted our fence a shade of blue she didn't approve of. Yesterday she slapped me across the face for defending my immigrant mother's right to belong in our neighborhood. This is what happens when small-minded people get drunk on tiny amounts of power. The thread continued for 47 posts, each one documenting a different family Victoria had terrorized. Emma had spent months quietly collecting stories. The Ramirez family forced to remove their vegetable garden. The elderly Mrs. Kim fined $500 for hanging laundry on her own back porch. The young couple who'd been driven out after their toddler's tricycle was deemed unsightly street clutter. By dawn, #Victoria Sterling was trending nationally. The local news had picked up the story. Emma's phone buzzed constantly with interview requests, support messages, and shares from people who'd faced similar HOA tyranny. Emma sat at her kitchen table, watching the numbers climb, 10,000 shares, 50,000, 100,000, and felt a mixture of exhilaration and terror. She'd wanted to expose Victoria Sterling's behavior, but she hadn't expected this level of response. Her phone rang. Margaret, calling from the hospital between surgeries. Emma, honey, are you okay? Mrs. Patterson just called and said there are news vans outside our house. Emma's stomach dropped. Mom, I can explain, what's going on? She said something about the internet and Victoria Sterling. Emma quickly filled her mother in on the previous day's threats and her decision to go public. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. Oh, sweetheart, Margaret finally said. I'm proud of you for standing up for what's right, but I'm scared about what this means. Victoria Sterling doesn't lose gracefully. I know, Mom. But I couldn't just let her win. Someone had to say something. I'm coming home. Don't talk to any reporters until I get there, okay? Emma agreed, but it was already too late. Her story had taken on a life of its own. At 8:15 a.m., Emma watched from her bedroom window as Victoria Sterling's black BMW pulled into her driveway across the street. Even from a distance, Emma could see the rigid fury in the woman's posture as she climbed out of her car. Victoria's phone was pressed to her ear, and she was gesturing wildly. Emma's doorbell rang 20 minutes later. Through the peephole, Emma saw Victoria Sterling flanked by the same attorney and deputy from the day before, but their demeanor had changed. Where yesterday they'd been confident and intimidating, now they looked harried and defensive. Open the door, Emma. Victoria's voice was sharp with barely controlled rage. We need to talk. My mother said not to talk to anyone until she gets home. This can't wait, Bradley, the attorney, called out. The situation has escalated beyond what any of us anticipated. We need to discuss damage control. Emma hesitated. Part of her wanted to face them, to see Victoria Sterling's reaction to having her behavior exposed. But her mother's warning echoed in her mind. I'll wait for my mom, Emma said through the door. Victoria's voice rose. You have no idea what you've done, you little brat. You've destroyed my reputation, my standing in this community. People are calling me a monster, a racist. Victoria, the attorney interrupted. This isn't helping. She's a 17-year-old girl. Victoria shrieked. She's nobody. How dare she think she can destroy me? Emma pressed her back against the door, her heart pounding. Through the wood, she could hear Victoria's breathing, ragged and furious. You wanted consequences. Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper, but Emma could still hear every word. You wanted to know what happens when you cross me. You're about to find out. Their footsteps retreated, but Emma remained frozen against the door. Something in Victoria's tone had chilled her to the bone. This wasn't just anger, it was something darker, more dangerous. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from her best friend Sarah. "Holy shit, Em, you're all over Twitter. Are you okay? My mom says people are protesting outside the HOA office." Emma pulled up the news coverage on her laptop. The story had exploded beyond social media. Cable news was running segments on HOA abuse. Legal experts were weighing in on the constitutional implications. Housing advocates were calling for federal oversight of homeowner associations. At the center of it all was Victoria Sterling's face, a photo someone had pulled from the HOA website, showing her at a neighborhood meeting with her usual severe expression. The caption read, "HOA president under fire for alleged assault on teen." Emma's phone rang again. This time it was her mother's friend Lisa, the housing lawyer. "Emma, I've been following the story online. I want you to know that what Victoria Sterling did yesterday, the threats, the intimidation, that's not legal. We can file charges against her." "Really?" "Absolutely. And given the public attention this is getting, I think we have a strong case. But Emma, I need you to be careful. When people like Victoria Sterling feel cornered, they can become unpredictable." Emma thought about the venom in Victoria's voice, the way she'd said, "You're about to find out." "What do you mean unpredictable?" "I mean she's facing the destruction of everything she's built her identity around. Her reputation, her power, her control over the neighborhood. People in that position sometimes do desperate things." After hanging up, Emma tried to focus on schoolwork, but concentration was impossible. Every few minutes, another notification popped up on her phone. Supporters, reporters, other HOA victims wanting to share their stories. The movement she'd started was taking on a life of its own. At 11:30 a.m., Emma heard a commotion outside. Through her window, she saw a crowd gathering. In the street, not protesters, but neighbors. People from her own community, standing in clusters, talking in hushed, urgent tones. Mrs. Patterson from next door was crying. Mr. Ramirez was shaking his head, his face grim. Even the Johnsons, who usually kept to themselves, were in the street. Looking stunned. Emma's phone rang. Sarah again. "Emma, you need to see this. Check the Willowbrook Community Facebook page. Right now." Emma navigated to the page and felt her blood freeze. Victoria Sterling had posted a response to Emma's viral thread, and it was brutal. "The recent attacks on my character and the HOA board represent a coordinated effort to undermine the values and standards that make Willowbrook a desirable place to live. The Chen family has repeatedly violated community covenants, and when asked to comply, they chose to launch a vicious personal attack rather than accept responsibility for their actions. I've served this community faithfully for 8 years, and I won't be silenced by a teenage girl who thinks internet mob tactics can replace adult responsibility and civic duty." But it was the comments that made Emma's stomach turn. Victoria had clearly rallied her supporters, and they were vicious. These people never fit in here anyway. Maybe it's time they found somewhere more suitable. I've seen the mother coming home at all hours. Who knows what kind of example she's setting? The daughter is obviously disturbed. Did you see those photos? She's probably making half of it up for attention. Emma scrolled through dozens of similar comments, each one cutting deeper than the last. She'd expected pushback, but this felt like a coordinated assassination of her character and her family's reputation. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "You should have minded your own business. Now everyone will know what you really are." Emma's hands shook as she screenshot the message. More texts followed, all from different numbers, all carrying the same threatening tone. Someone was organizing this, coordinating the harassment. At 12:45 p.m., Emma's doorbell rang again. This time it was Detective Ray Martinez from the local police department. "Miss Chen, I'm here about the reports of harassment and threats you've been receiving." Emma let him in, grateful to finally have someone taking the situation seriously. Detective Martinez was middle-aged, soft-spoken, with kind eyes that reminded Emma of her uncle. "I've been following the story online," he said, settling into their living room. "I want you to know that we take these kinds of threats seriously, especially when they are directed at minors. Emma showed him the threatening texts, the hostile comments on social media, the escalating pattern of harassment her family had endured. Has Mrs. Sterling contacted you directly since your post went viral? Emma described the morning's confrontation. Victoria's barely contained rage, the attorney's obvious concern about damage control. Detective Martinez took notes, his expression growing more serious with each detail. Emma, I need you to understand something. When people have as much to lose as Victoria Sterling does right now, they sometimes make very poor decisions. I want you to be extra careful over the next few days. You think she'd actually hurt me? I think she's facing national humiliation and potential legal consequences. That can make people desperate. I'm going to station a patrol car on your street for the next few days, just as a precaution. After the detective left, Emma felt simultaneously safer and more frightened. The fact that the police were taking Victoria's threats seriously meant the danger was real. Margaret Areve. Emma woke to the sound of car doors slamming and raised voices. Her bedside clock read 6:43 a.m., and pale morning light filtered through her curtains. She peered out her window to see neighbors congregating in the street, some carrying printed signs that read, "Support our HOA" and "Community Standards Matter." Her phone had been buzzing all night. The latest notification showed Victoria Sterling's emergency meeting announcement had generated over 500 comments. The neighborhood was splitting down the middle, those who supported Victoria's iron-fisted control and those who'd finally found the courage to speak out against it. Margaret knocked softly on Emma's door. Honey, are you awake? Yeah, Mom. Come in. Margaret entered carrying 2 cups of coffee, her face drawn with exhaustion. I've been up since 4 reading the comments online. Half the neighborhood is calling you a hero, the other half is calling you a troublemaker. Emma accepted the coffee gratefully. What do you think will happen at the meeting? I think Victoria Sterling is going to try to turn the entire community against us. She's desperate, and desperate people do dangerous things. Emma's phone rang. Detective Martinez. Miss Chen, I need to inform you that we received several noise complaints about your house last night. People claiming loud music, parties, disturbances. Emma's blood-chilled. We went to bed at 10:30. There was no music, no party, nothing. Oh no. I drove by your house twice during my patrol. It was completely quiet. But the complaints are being filed officially, and they are all from the same source. Victoria Sterling. Her and her supporters. They are building a case that you're a disruptive influence in the neighborhood. It's harassment, but it's the legal kind, the kind that's hard to prove in court. After hanging up, Emma felt the walls closing in. Victoria wasn't just trying to destroy her reputation, she was systematically creating a paper trail that would justify whatever action she planned to take. At 8 a.m., Emma watched from her window as a steady stream of neighbors walked toward the community center. Some she recognized as Victoria's longtime supporters, the Hendersons, the Weatherbys, the Clarks. But others surprised her. Mrs. Patterson from next door, who'd always been kind to Emma, was carrying a community standards sign. Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. My mom won't let me come to the meeting. She says it's too volatile. Are you going? Emma hadn't decided. Part of her wanted to face Victoria Sterling publicly, to defend herself and her family. But another part knew that walking into that meeting would be like walking into a lion's den. Margaret made the decision for her. We are going. Both of us. If we don't show up, Victoria wins by default. At 9:45 a.m., Emma and Margaret walked toward the community center. The morning air was crisp, and Emma noticed how the sunlight caught the blue of their fence, still beautiful, still defiant, still worth fighting for. The community center was packed. Emma had never seen so many neighbors in one place. The room buzzed with tension, conversations stopping abruptly when she and Margaret entered. Eyes followed them as they found seats near the back. Victoria Sterling stood at the front, impeccably dressed in a navy suit, her silver hair perfectly styled. She looked composed, professional, in control. But Emma could see the rage simmering beneath the surface, the way her knuckles were white where she gripped the podium. Thank you all for coming, Victoria began, her voice carrying easily through the room. I know this is an unusual time for a meeting, but we are facing an unusual situation. Our community is under attack. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. For 8 years, I've served as your president, working tirelessly to maintain the standards that make Willowbrook a desirable place to live. We've preserved property values, maintained order, and created a community where families can thrive. Emma felt her stomach twist. Victoria was rewriting history, painting herself as a benevolent leader rather than the tyrant she'd become. But yesterday, one family decided that our rules don't apply to them. They chose to launch a vicious personal attack rather than accept responsibility for their actions. They've invited the entire internet to mock our community, to portray us as villains for wanting to maintain basic standards. Victoria's gaze found Emma across the room. They've turned a simple covenant violation into a national spectacle, bringing shame and negative attention to our neighborhood. Mr. Ramirez, the elderly man who'd been forced to remove his vegetable garden, stood up. Mrs. Sterling, with respect, maybe it's time we examined whether some of our rules have gone too far. Victoria's smile was sharp. Mr. Ramirez, I understand your concern. But rules exist for a reason. Without them, we'd have chaos. Would you want your neighbor painting their house neon green? Would you want someone running a business out of their garage? We want basic human dignity. Emma found herself standing, her voice clear and strong. We want to belong to a community that doesn't punish creativity or diversity. The room erupted. Some people cheered, others booed. Victoria banged her gavel repeatedly. Miss Chen, Victoria's voice cut through the noise, you're out of order. This is a meeting for homeowners, not children. I live here too, Emma said, her heart pounding but her voice steady. And I have a right to speak about the place I call home. You have a right to respect community standards, Victoria snapped. Something you've consistently failed to do. Mrs. Patterson stood up, surprising Emma. Victoria, I've known you for 15 years. I've seen you change from someone who cared about our neighborhood into someone who uses fear and intimidation to control people. That's absurd, Victoria said, but her composure was cracking. Is it? Mrs. Patterson's voice was gaining strength. You fined the Johnsons for their child's bicycle. You forced the Ramirez family to destroy their garden. You've made people afraid to express themselves, afraid to make their homes feel like home. More voices joined in. Emma watched in amazement as neighbors she'd never expected to defend her began speaking up about Victoria's abuses of power. You slapped a teenager, someone called out. You threatened her family, another voice added. Victoria's face was flushed now, her professional demeanor crumbling. I've given my life to this community. I've sacrificed my time, my energy, my reputation to keep this place from falling apart. By terrorizing anyone who doesn't conform, Emma said, standing again. By treating people like me and my mother as if we don't belong here. You don't belong here. Victoria exploded, her voice raw with fury. You came here and immediately started causing problems. You ignore our rules, you attack our values, you turn our neighbors against each other. You're destroying everything we've built. The room fell silent. Victoria's mask had finally slipped completely, revealing the hatred and bigotry that had always driven her actions. There it is, Emma said quietly. The truth. You don't want to maintain standards, Mrs. Sterling. You want to maintain control. You want to decide who belongs and who doesn't based on your own prejudices. Victoria's breathing was rapid, her eyes wild. You think you're so smart, so righteous. You think you can destroy me with your little internet campaign. But you have no idea what I'm capable of. Detective Martinez, who'd been standing quietly at the back of the room, stepped forward. Mrs. Sterling, I think that's enough. Victoria whirled around, her face contorted with rage. This is a private meeting, detective. You have no authority here. I have authority when someone makes threats against a minor, Martinez replied calmly. And I think it's time this meeting ended. But Victoria wasn't finished. She turned back to Emma, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried through the entire room. You want to know what happens to people who don't belong. You want to know what happens when you push too far. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Something in Victoria's tone, in the way she was looking at her, made every instinct scream danger. "You're going to find out," Victoria continued. "Very soon. And when you do, remember that you brought this on yourself. You and your mother, with your arrogance and your disrespect and your complete inability to understand your place in this community." Margaret stood up, her voice shaking with anger. "Are you threatening my daughter?" Victoria's smile was cold. "I'm promising her consequences. Every action has consequences, Margaret. You should have taught your daughter that." Detective Martinez was moving toward the front of the room now, but Victoria wasn't done. "This meeting is adjourned," she announced. "But this matter is far from over. The Chen family will learn that their actions have repercussions. They will learn that some things are more important than teenage rebellion and internet attention." As people began filing out, Emma felt the weight of dozens of stares. Some sympathetic, others hostile, all carrying the electric tension of a community at war with itself. "We should go," Margaret whispered, but Emma was frozen, watching Victoria Sterling pack up her papers with deliberate precision. Victoria looked up and caught Emma's eye one last time. Her smile was serene now, almost peaceful, and that terrified Emma more than her earlier rage. "Goodbye, Emma," Victoria said softly. "Enjoy your afternoon." Outside, Detective Martinez caught up with them. "I want you both to be very careful. What happened in there wasn't just anger, it was a woman who feels cornered and is planning something." "What can we do?" Margaret asked. "Stay alert. Don't go anywhere alone. And call me immediately if." Emma spent the afternoon in her room, trying to process the morning's confrontation. The meeting had exposed Victoria Sterling's true nature to the entire community, but it had also escalated the conflict to a dangerous new level. The way Victoria had looked at her, the cold promise in her voice, it haunted Emma. At 1:30 p.m., her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number: "Meet me at Riverside Park, near the old oak tree. 2:30 p.m. Come alone. There's something you need to know about your mother." A friend. Emma stared at the message, her heart racing. Riverside Park was only a few blocks away, a place where she'd spent countless afternoons as a child. The old oak tree was a massive centuries-old giant that stood near the river's edge, secluded and peaceful, but everything about the message felt wrong. The vague threat about her mother, the demand that she come alone, the anonymous sender, every instinct told her to delete it and call Detective Martinez. Her phone buzzed again. "Your mother doesn't know about the second mortgage. The gambling debts. The money she borrowed from the wrong people. If you want to protect her, you'll come. Don't tell anyone." Emma's blood turned to ice. Second mortgage. Gambling debts. Her mother had never mentioned any financial problems beyond the normal struggles of a single parent. But what if there were things Margaret had hidden to protect her daughter? A third message arrived, 2:30 p.m. "Don't be late. And Emma, if you bring anyone or tell anyone, the information goes public. Your mother's career will be destroyed." Emma's hands shook as she read the messages. She knew she should call someone, Detective Martinez, her mother, even Sarah. But what if the threats were real? What if her mother really was in some kind of financial trouble that could destroy her nursing career? At 2:15 p.m., Emma made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She grabbed her jacket and headed for the door, leaving a note. For her mother, "Gone for a walk to clear my head. Back soon. Love you." The walk to Riverside Park took 8 minutes. Emma knew the route by heart, down Maple Street, across the pedestrian bridge, through the small wooded area that bordered the river. It was a beautiful afternoon, warm and sunny, the kind of day that should have been perfect for a peaceful walk, but Emma felt anything but peaceful. With each step, her anxiety grew. The messages about her mother's supposed debts felt like obvious manipulation, but the specific details, second mortgage, gambling, wrong people, were too precise to be random lies. Riverside Park was nearly empty. A few joggers passed by on the main trail, but the area near the old oak tree was isolated, hidden from the main paths by thick vegetation and the gentle curve of the riverbank. Emma reached the tree at exactly 2:30 p.m. No one was there. She waited, checking her phone repeatedly. The silence was broken only by the gentle rush of water over rocks and the distant sound of traffic. 5 minutes passed, then at 2:42 p.m., Emma heard footsteps approaching through the trees. She turned, expecting to see whoever had sent the messages, but instead found herself face to face with Victoria Sterling. Victoria looked different than she had at the morning meeting. Gone was the professional suit and perfect composure. She wore dark jeans and a black jacket, her silver hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She looked younger, more athletic, and infinitely more dangerous. "Hello, Emma," Victoria said, her voice calm and pleasant. "Thank you for coming." Emma's mouth went dry. "You sent those messages?" "I did. I needed to speak with you privately, and I knew you wouldn't come if you knew it was me." Emma's hand moved toward her phone, but Victoria held up a finger. "I wouldn't do that if I were you. We are quite alone here, and I think you'll want to hear what I have to say before you make any calls." "The things you said about my mother were complete fiction," Victoria said with a smile. "Your mother is a model citizen with excellent credit and no gambling habits. I simply needed you to come here." Emma felt a surge of relief followed immediately by terror. If Victoria had lied about her mother's debts, what else was she lying about? And why had she wanted Emma alone in this isolated place? "What do you want?" Emma asked, taking a step backward. Victoria matched her movement, maintaining the distance between them. "I want you to understand something, Emma. I want you to comprehend the magnitude of what you've done. I exposed your abuse of power. I gave people courage to speak up. You destroyed my life," Victoria interrupted, her voice still eerily calm. "Do you know what happened after your little internet campaign? Do you know what I've lost?" Emma remained silent, but Victoria continued. "Anyway, my husband filed for divorce this morning. 23 years of marriage, gone. He said he can't be associated with someone who's become a national symbol of HOA tyranny. My law firm, did you know I'm a partner at Bradley, Sterling and Associates? They've asked me to take a leave of absence indefinitely." Victoria took another step forward. "My daughter called from college. She's embarrassed to have me as a mother. She's changed her last name on social media so no one will connect her to me. My own child is ashamed of me because of you." Emma's heart was pounding, but she tried to keep her voice steady. "Those are consequences of your own actions, Mrs. Sterling. I didn't make you slap me. I didn't make you threaten my family. You made me defend myself." Victoria's composure cracked slightly. "You attacked everything I've worked for, everything I've built. You painted me as a monster when all I've ever done is try to maintain order and standards. By terrorizing people. By making families afraid in their own homes." Victoria's laugh was sharp and bitter. "Afraid? You want to know what afraid feels like, Emma?" Something in her tone made Emma take another step back. They were moving deeper into the secluded area near the river, farther from the main trails where someone might hear if she screamed. "You've been playing games," Victoria continued. "Posting on social media, giving interviews, playing the victim. But games have consequences, and now it's time for you to learn what real consequences look like." Emma's fight-or-flight instincts kicked in. She turned to run, but Victoria was faster than she'd expected. The older woman grabbed Emma's arm with surprising strength. "Let go of me." Emma struggled, but Victoria's grip was iron-tight. "You're not going anywhere until we finish this conversation," Victoria said. "You started this war, Emma. You don't get to run away when it gets uncomfortable." Emma tried to pull free, but Victoria used her momentum to spin her around, slamming her back against the massive trunk of the oak tree. The impact knocked the wind out of Emma's lungs. "You think you're so brave," Victoria hissed, her face inches from Emma's. "You think you're fighting for justice and equality and all those pretty ideals teenagers love. But you're just a spoiled brat who couldn't accept that actions have consequences." Emma gasped for air, trying to speak. People will look for me, will they? You left a note saying you went for a walk. Your mother won't be home for hours. Detective Martinez is busy investigating those noise complaints I filed. No one knows you're here. Victoria reached into her jacket and pulled out something that made Emma's blood freeze, a syringe filled with clear liquid. "What is that?" Emma whispered. "Something to help you relax," Victoria said. "You've been under so much stress lately, haven't you? All this conflict, all this attention. It's been overwhelming for a teenager." Emma understood with crystal clarity what Victoria intended. She wasn't just planning to hurt her, she was planning to make it look like suicide. A troubled teenager, overwhelmed by the controversy she'd created, taking her own life in a moment of despair. "No one will believe that," Emma said, finding her voice. "I would never, wouldn't you? A 17-year-old girl who destroyed an adult's life over a fence. Who received death threats and harassment. Who watched her community turn against her. It's quite believable, actually." Victoria raised the syringe, and Emma's survival instincts exploded into action. She drove her knee upward, catching Victoria in the stomach. The older woman doubled over, gasping, and Emma broke free. Emma ran toward the main trail, screaming for help, but the park was still nearly empty. Behind her, she could hear Victoria recovering, cursing, giving chase. Emma reached the pedestrian bridge, her lungs burning. She looked back to see Victoria following, no longer pretending to be anything other than a predator hunting her prey. Emma's phone had signal here. She dialed 911 with shaking fingers. 911, what's your emergency? This is Emma Chen, she gasped, still running. Victoria Sterling is trying to kill me. I'm at Riverside Park, on the pedestrian bridge. The line went dead. Emma looked at her phone to see the screen was cracked. It must have happened when Victoria slammed her against the tree. Victoria was gaining ground. Despite being 45 years older, she was in excellent shape and running with the desperate energy of someone who had nothing left to lose. Emma reached the other side of the bridge and made a split-second decision. Instead of heading toward the street where Victoria might catch her in the open, she turned into the dense woods that bordered the park. It was a mistake. The woods were thick with undergrowth, fallen logs, and hidden roots that caught at Emma's feet. She stumbled repeatedly, while behind her Victoria seemed to navigate the terrain with predatory grace. "You can't run forever, Emma," Victoria called out. "And when I catch you, this will be much worse for you." Emma burst into a small clearing and found herself at